When application completion rates drop, something is off. Students aren't getting the support they need, and that's affecting your numbers. Enter Element 451's AI assistants. They step in where students struggle, offering real-time answers and advice, guiding them through every step. Learn how AI assistants can boost your enrollment outcomes. Visit element451.com/AI team to learn more.
Welcome to Breaking Silos, a podcast that shines a light on the incredible partnerships happening across campuses every day. I'm your host, Shane Baglini from Muhlenberg College. Join me every 2 weeks for discussions with some of the best minds in higher ed marketing, enrollment management, student affairs, campus leadership, and more. Breaking Silos is part of the Enrollify network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. My guest today on Breaking Silos should be a familiar voice for the ears of Enrollify listeners. She's the founder and president of Solve Higher Ed Marketing, and she's also the host of Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO on Enrollify, Jaime Hunt. Hi, Jaime.
Hey, it's so weird to be on this side of the conversation.
I bet. Well, thanks so much for joining me. And I will start by saying that part of the inspiration for this show is based on what you tell everybody at the end of your show to go out and bust some silos. So it's really, it's fun to have you here. And we're talking about silos today. And I think a fair assessment of silos is to say that they're the worst.
Yes.
And so in your opinion, Jaime, in your experience, what are some of the causes that you've seen of siloing on specifically on campus, but across higher ed? And why is it so important for institutions, specifically leadership, to address them before it's too late?
Yeah. I mean, I honestly, in some ways, I feel like it is too late. In some ways, like there really needs to be an intentional effort to bust them up. But what I think causes them is a couple of things. One, I think that the way that we structure the org chart for higher ed is very siloed. Like there's like this deep, deep tunnel of people dedicated to one unit or one college or one whatever. And there's not this sense of we're all in this together. So the decentralization of some key functions, I think, causes silos. And then the other thing I would say that causes them is territoriality. So you get people who are like, I just want to be able to say, I did this project. This is my project. I don't want to have to credit any contributors or, get any outside perspectives on this project. This is mine. You hear a lot of mine, my website, my whatever. That leads to major siloing because you get where somebody's like, I don't want any voices at the table other than mine or my people that I can control. I don't want outside perspectives. And then that just builds up bigger and bigger walls over time. And part of that territoriality, I think, comes from ambition as well, particularly, and like deans don't come after me with pitchforks or anything, but particularly when you have a college, for example, where the dean has aspirations to be a provost or a president, I think they want to be able to say, I did this. This was mine. And they don't want to bring in other areas of campus necessarily to help them accomplish something because they feel like then they can't say, I did this. But if you'll indulge me for a minute, my friend Brenda Allen, when she was interviewing to be president of Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, I watched her interview. It was live streamed as well as the other candidates. And she kept saying, we. She said, we. And she was, that sounds terrible. But she said, we, and not I. And it jumped out at me because that's the kind of leader she was. She didn't like silos. She was constantly bringing in people from other divisions to help solve problems. And she got the job. And I think, honestly, if you're trying to box yourself into something and say, this is my territory, you're not going to be impressing future leadership for other roles. You need to be thinking about building coalitions and bringing people together to be able to kind of solve problems in a more effective way.
Yeah. And to your point, I feel like coming in to an institution from the outside, people on that campus are not going to want to hear that you're going to come in and try to sweepingly change all of these things yourself, but you're going to be collaborative and work as a team.
Yeah. I remember texting her afterwards, like, you're going to get this job, because I could see the audience was feeding on her energy of, we're going to do this together. And when I was at a previous institution, I remember kind of course correcting one of my staff and saying, because she was saying, this person won't do this, and it's my website. And I was like, it's the university's website that you and I are privileged enough to be able to work on. And it's that getting rid of the my and turning my into ours and I into we, I think, is a big first step to busting those silos.
Yeah, that's a great point. And so, Jaime, from your experience on campus and now maybe off campus too, is an interesting angle to look at things. When did you first recognize silos, or more in generally speaking, a lack of collaboration as one of the biggest challenges for Marcom leaders?
Yeah, I remember sitting in a meeting that had admissions and financial aid and student accounts and housing. And these all reported to, I think, 3 different VPs. And then marketing reported to another VP. And we were in this meeting, and people were almost like actively hostile to the idea of collaborating around a particular project. And I started to really start to look for that then. And I started to see, like, we are not serving our students by not working collaboratively on this. And we really need to be thinking more in the way of serving our audiences instead of serving our department or serving our division or ourselves. And so that was really, it just jumped out at me, like, our students are not being served by this mentality of, I'm going to send out my stuff when I want to send it out, and I don't care when you send yours out. And it was like, okay, but then they're getting their bill and not getting their financial aid letter until 2 weeks later, and they're stressed for 2 weeks. This doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And so that for me is when it really, really jumped out at me that we have a problem. And I hear about that and see that on campuses all over the place. Even, I would wager, when you get a large enough organization, and I know this is true at institutions I've been at, both Old Dominion and Miami, we had large enough division that I led that there was silos within our divisions even. And breaking them up is very, very difficult, but very, very necessary.
Yeah, and I was talking to Eddie Francis a couple episodes ago about, this is not just a higher ed issue. This happens everywhere. The difference in higher ed, I think a lot of times, is that when it happens in the corporate world, it's either you need to play nice in the sandbox or you're gone. And we don't really have that mentality based on a number of different things in higher ed. We don't really have that mentality, and that can be part of the issue. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, Jaime, you've been at a variety of institutions of different sizes and different statures at this point. What are some of the better examples that you've seen of really being intentional about breaking silos and increasing collaboration?
Yeah, I think often the first areas where you see silos getting busted are the silos between admission and marketing. And I think that's a good place to start, because often if you don't have that, you have a situation where you have marketing and, for lack of a better word, because this is a term that makes sense in corporate America, sales being very, very different. So you start to see some collaboration happening there. But then you're not seeing the collaboration always between academics and marketing or academics and admissions, because you're talking about the product, right? The products that we're offering. Marketing and admissions or sales should be in the room for that product. And so one example that was just really impressive to me was at Miami University. They created this Miami Academic Program Incubator. And it had admissions, marketing, academic affairs, finance and administration. I mean, it had sort of people from all over campus that we got together about once a month and reviewed academic program proposals in various stages. Like, it would be like, you start with this level of proposal and we kind of give you feedback. And the idea was that we're trying to shape what the product is going to be, identify if there's a market for it, identify what financial resources are necessary for this product, what level of tuition, if it's a graduate program that can have market tuition, and then how would we roll this out and how would we sell this? And it was everybody coming together. Literally every area of campus that needed to have a voice in the development of a new program had a voice in that. And it was so impressive to me that we did that, because the years I was at Miami are the only time in my 20 years of higher ed that I've been involved at that level, in terms of before the program's even a twinkle in somebody's eye, to be able to say, here's the market research to support whether or not we should do this program. Like maybe a fashion design program in the middle of a cornfield isn't the best choice, or, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's impressive. I mean, I would say at Muhlenberg in the graduate program space, we are kind of getting there, but we shifted our strategies and our processes to have marketing involved at the onset. And, it could just be as simple as, hey, can you do some keyword research on what should we name this program?
Yeah.
And, you'd be shocked at how much time and money and investment in things that it saves. So that's an impressive example. And that's great to hear. So shifting gears a little bit, Jamie, you've been a leading voice on the talent crisis in higher ed. What role do you see, or do you think silos play in some of the frustrations that you see on campus from people either leaving campus, going to the private sector, thinking about leaving campus? When we talk to peers at conferences, it is a pain point for people. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that topic.
Yeah, I think as marketers in higher ed, the biggest challenge that I think we face is typically enrollment, right? We're asked to help enrollment drive enrollment growth, or at least stabilizing enrollment or maintaining an enrollment for the most part. And when you're asked to do that, but you have no say over the product, you have no input into the naming of the product, what the curriculum is, and you have people who are brilliant people with PhDs in something completely unrelated to marketing or sales or whatever, making a bunch of decisions and then giving you something and saying, sell this. It can get really demoralizing to sit year after year and maybe eke out numbers or barely hit numbers when you don't have a say in the product. And I think that demoralization isn't just on the shoulders of the chief marketing officer. It's on the shoulders of everybody that falls below that, because you constantly feel like you're working against silos. And you constantly feel like you're working in a situation where you're not going to be able to be successful because of these structural problems that exist. And so I think that that's a big reason why people leave, or a factor into why people leave, particularly when people leave higher ed for jobs where suddenly they have a voice in the product and they have a voice in the customer service aspect of it, or the delivery of the product. I was so grateful at Winston-Salem State that the chancellor really felt like brand belonged to everybody, and really it belonged to everybody, but it also was all my responsibility. So I needed to make sure that people understood that customer service was a part of the brand. Customer service is part of the student experience, and having that level of influence over how we're delivering the product. Most higher ed institutions, you're not that lucky. And that, I think, can end up being frustrating, particularly for some of the very talented people who are like, if I could just have the reins taken off me, imagine what I could do. But the reins are so heavy and the silos are so deep that I just can't do what I'm capable of.
Yeah. Hey, it's Shane, and I'm excited to tell you that Element 451 is hosting the AI Engage Summit on October 29th and 30th. This free virtual event features many of your favorite Enrollify creators and will explore AI's impact on student engagement, enrollment marketing, and institutional success. Learn to tap into AI to automate personalized outreach, improve your emails, streamline content creation, and boost campaign performance. Plus, hear directly from current students on how AI is influencing their engagement and campus life. The AI Engage Summit is your guide to understanding and applying AI at your school. Registration is free, so visit element451.com to save your spot. Now, back to the show. Yeah, I love your point about the brand being everybody. I think it was, I forget who said the quote. I think it might be Jeff Bezos that said, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room.
Yeah.
And every interaction that we have with students, though it's not in marketing's control, it ultimately reflects back on the brand. And you're right, to have no real control over that is frustrating. It can feel very isolating. And so I agree with your point there. So let's talk about Solve Higher Ed Marketing and how. So first of all, give us some background on your new venture and your new company, and how are you hoping to help institutions address silos?
Yeah, I am now full-time consulting, and I'm doing really bespoke consulting. So folks bring to me a challenge that they're having, and I come up with a proposal for how I think I might be able to solve it. So a lot of the projects I'm doing are org assessments, student journey maps, sort of brands for smaller entities within an institution. So one of the projects I have, the central office can't take on branding this particular aspect of their institution. They're overwhelmed. They don't have enough bandwidth for it, but I can come in and do that work for them. But because I've been a higher ed CMO and I know how important it is for that person and their team to be along for the journey for the work that I'm doing and have it be within the overall institutional brand. So really the work I'm doing is truly bespoke, truly tailored to what the institution wants and needs. And how I hope it breaks down silos is I feel like whatever I bring to something, I'm bringing this mentality that's opposed to silos. So my organizational assessments, I just finished one, and my report is full of recommendations for how to break down the silos between the departments within the unit. For this student journey map project that I really am having a lot of fun working on, student journey maps inherently break up silos because you're talking about the journey that a student takes throughout their experience, and that naturally crosses many areas of an institution, if not all. So I'm kind of hoping that flavor of my final reports and my final products being something that's silo busting helps bust the silos on those campuses. But then I'm also, as part of my consulting, I have 2 keynotes on my schedule for fall. Both of them are about busting silos. So hopefully them like spreading it like a little germ. It can be, instead of COVID-19, it can be like Jaime Anti-Silo 24 or something, and spread out to those people and hopefully inspire them to want to talk about we instead of I and ours instead of mine.
Yeah. And from what we've talked about, and we've had a couple of conversations, you love higher ed. And so I'm curious to just follow up on what really drove the decision to go from campus to a more, an off-campus role and maybe helping institutions on a broader scale.
Yeah. So I was a fellow with the Academy for Innovative Higher Education Leadership this year. And so I was getting to interact I was the only marketer in that fellowship. So it's people from all over institutions. It used to be a training ground for college presidents, but now it's more of a leadership training ground. And I really saw that these challenges that exist at these institutions are fairly shared. These schools share common challenges. And I feel so strongly that higher ed is in kind of hot, deep water right now. We're seeing declining support from our states in a lot of cases. We're seeing a declining perception of value for higher ed. And I hate the term enrollment cliff, but the enrollment cliff, demographic changes, all of that. And I see that higher ed really needs to make some big shifts. But I also know that my colleagues across the country are so overwhelmed with work and so just like nose to the grindstone on everything that they just sometimes need somebody who can come in and make some changes or do a project or tackle a challenge for them to help them get into a position where their institution can be more successful. And so as I was thinking about it, it was like, I can help make this one institution more successful, or I can help higher ed in general. And because my passion for higher ed is for higher ed and not for a specific institution, that's when it was like, okay, well then I need to do this other thing and not be focused just on helping one institution be successful, but help as many as I possibly can.
Yeah, and I would imagine your time as a CMO really drives home that idea of, you've walked a million miles in our shoes, right? And so the ability to help people find their footing and fight the battles that you've fought has to be really rewarding.
It is. It's so fun to, I do like a debrief meeting after I've solved somebody's problem or whatever, a couple weeks afterwards. And it's so rewarding to be like, oh my gosh, Jaime, I feel so much better positioned to tackle this now. And it's so rewarding to be even in the intake meeting with somebody and to be like, I've been there. I know the problem. It feels, I think, for a lot of people like, okay, somebody who's seen this before is here to help me solve it. And I think that's rewarding. And I think that's something that I bring to the table is that 20 years of experience working in higher ed, 9 years at the cabinet level, at all different types of institutions. I know exactly what their challenges are. I know what conversations are in cabinet meetings. I know what the financial challenges are. And so helping people solve some of their problems so that they can tackle other challenges more effectively, it's really, really rewarding. I'm really loving it.
That's great. That's great. And so one of the exciting things that you're doing with Solve Higher Ed Marketing is a CMO bootcamp.
Yes.
Which is really exciting. And most of our listeners are mid-career junior professionals. And so I would be interested for you to give us some insights into not only the bootcamp, but your advice to younger professionals looking to stand out either on campus or off in what's a really competitive industry at this time.
Yeah. So the CMO Bootcamp, I did a survey a couple of weeks ago to try to help me as I'm working on the curriculum for it. And I was really surprised that the bulk of people who expressed an interest in it are not currently CMOs. So I thought that that's actually really cool and helps me shape kind of what the curriculum is going to be. But the idea is to help folks get the skills that they need to be able to be that person that's in a cabinet meeting that can handle some of the challenges that they're going to face and to be better positioned for that. And so, building out a curriculum based on those survey results is something that I'm working on over the next couple of weeks. I'm really, really excited about that. But I think my advice for people who are mid-career and looking to make that big leap, and I'm mentoring so many people who have that desire right now, and is to really, really focus on what are your strengths and where are their gaps? So for some people that are coming up through marketing, they don't have experience with crisis communications. And many, many, many of these VP level roles require ability to handle crisis. And I would not recommend anybody go cold into that. Do not go cold into, I can figure it out on the job. Start to see if there's opportunities for you to help and support the people on your campus who do handle crisis. How can you get more involved in issues management, crisis communications type things? That's just one example. Some folks, it's like, I've never been on the digital side. I've always been a creative. How can you get experience on the digital side? If you've always been on the digital side and don't have experience with creative, how can you get more involved in that side? Go to conferences, listen to podcasts, read books. I strongly recommend the American Marketing Association Higher Ed Symposium. That's fantastic, peer curated content. It's very rigorous, juried process for the proposals that get through there, and they're excellent. That's a great opportunity. But don't shy away from things that aren't industry specific either. I'm a big fan of Coursera and getting, general marketing skills, general communication skills that you need. It doesn't have to be higher ed specific to be helpful and applicable to the work that you do. The most important thing, if you want to be a CMO, if you want to have that top job, you have to be the unicorn that at least understands everything. Maybe you haven't done everything, but you have to at least understand it. And so how can you get that understanding? In whatever learning style works for you, whether it's in-person, webinars, reading, podcasts, fill in the blank. There's so many resources out there. There's no excuse to not at least have an understanding of the areas of marketing.
Yeah, I feel like, well, first of all, thank you for that, Jaime. That's all great advice. And one of our previous episodes of Breaking Silos, we had 2 vice presidents for enrollment and marketing on talking about that role and how, needing to at least be competent and familiar in all of these areas, but no one person being an expert, but also having that background when needed. So great advice from you there. Thank you, Jaime, for your time and your insights on probably, you're probably the most outspoken opponent of silos that I've met. And so I appreciate your time to help us sort of deconstruct and maybe help people break some silos.
Absolutely. Anything I can do to help people break up silos, I'm here to do. My keynote presentations that I'm giving this fall, it's, my slogan is, I'm Jaime Hunt, I solve problems. And I added a big all in red handwritten font, and I hate silos. So whatever I can do to bust them up, I'm happy to do.
Well, thank you. And for the listeners, you can catch Jaime on Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO podcast here on Enrollify. And I would be remiss, Jaime, if I did not let you end the episode like you end your episodes on that podcast. So if you could take us away.
Let's go bust some silos.
Awesome. Thanks, Jaime. Breaking Silos is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry best as your hosts. Learn from Dave Cabilds, Jenny Lee Fowler, Eddie Francis, and many more of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.